Calgary made a 20-year bet against reality, and on December 30th, 2025, the city lost. Catastrophically, what happened that night on 16th Avenue wasn't an accident. It was an appointment. A violent reckoning under the cold glare of highway lights. A 1.95 meter wide pipe, the city's concrete artery, exploded. It didn't leak. It didn't crack. It detonated. The force launched a car into the air. It trapped a family with special needs children in their own vehicle, turning a major highway into a freezing, terrifying lake that required a fire department raft rescue. For 1.6 million people, this single piece of aging infrastructure carries 60% of their drinking water. And it had just failed. Again, if this scene of highway flooding and emergency rescues feels alarmingly familiar, let us know in the comments where you've seen it happen. This is a story about Calgary, but it isn't just about Calgary. Let's begin. But first, we have to ask you to do something. The data shows the vast majority of people who value this kind of journalism forget to subscribe. If you believe this work is essential and you want to see more of it, you have to hit that button. For channels like ours, it's not a vanity metric, it's a lifeline. Please, do it now. It makes all the difference. The break on December 30th was not a surprise. It was a sequel. Just 18 months earlier, in June of 2024, the exact same pipe ruptured. That failure plunged the city into 53 days of Stage 4 water restrictions. A period of collective anxiety where residents tracked daily consumption numbers like wartime reports. They rationed every drop. They let their lawns turn yellow. They took 2-minute showers. They did everything right. And they were promised it was being fixed. The city found not one, but 5 additional weak points. 5 hot spots that were quietly waiting to fail. They repaired them all. They celebrated a job well done. It was supposed to have solved everything. But here's what they didn't tell you. The pipe was a ticking clock. The repairs were just bandages on a fatal wound, and the city had been ignoring the sound of that clock for 20 years. So the real question is, was this a shocking disaster? Or was it the inevitable price of what one damning report would later call a culture of strategic amnesia? The infrastructure at the heart of this crisis has a name. The Bearspaw South Feeder Main. It was installed in 1975. A monument to a different era of engineering and a different level of foresight. The pipe is made from something called pressed concrete cylinder pipe, or PCCP. To understand why Calgary is now spending over $500 million to replace it, you have to understand what PCCP actually is. It's not just a big tube of concrete. It's a complex, high-tension system, a delicate and brutal balance of forces. Imagine a concrete core, wrapped with thousands upon thousands of strands of high-strength steel wire. These wires are pulled to an incredible tension, like a tightly wound spring, before being encased in a protective layer of mortar. It is this tension, this constant squeezing force, that gives the pipe its strength to withstand the immense pressures of carrying a city's water supply. For decades, it worked. Perfectly. But PCCP has a fatal flaw, an Achilles heel woven into its very design. Water is persistent. Over time, moisture can find its way through microscopic cracks in the concrete, reaching the steel wires meant to be protected. When water meets steel, corrosion begins. The wires, already under immense tension, start to thin. They rust. And then, one by one, they snap. There's no warning sound, no visible sign on the surface. It is a silent heart attack happening deep underground. Engineers in the industry have a term for it. They call it a brittle failure. One wire snaps, transferring its load to its neighbors. The extra stress causes them to snap. The failure cascades, instantly and explosively. It's not a leak, it's a structural implosion. The pipe doesn't just break, it disintegrates. The concrete shatters. The immense pressure of the water inside is suddenly unleashed. A geyser of water, mud, and debris erupts with the force of a bomb. This is what happened under the Trans-Canada Highway. Twice. It's a terrifying thought. A ticking time bomb under your feet. It makes you wonder what's running under your own street right now. If you've been down this rabbit hole of local infrastructure before, share your thoughts in the comments. The more we all talk about this, the less it stays buried. The city of Calgary should have known this. They had been given a preview. A dress rehearsal for the catastrophe. The warning shot was fired 20 years earlier, in 2004. A different water main, the McKnight Feeder Main in the city's northeast, catastrophically failed. It was also made of PCCP. It also exploded without warning, flooding communities and serving as the city's first major wake-up call about the fundamental fragility of this specific pipe technology. An alarm was sounded. Reports were written. The risk was identified, documented, and filed away. The city knew it was sitting on a network of these pipes. An entire generation of infrastructure was approaching the end of its design life, and its failure mode was not a gentle leak, but a sudden, violent explosion. For a moment, the problem had the city's full attention. And then, it didn't. The memory faded. The budgets tightened. The urgency was deferred. This is what the independent review panel, chaired by Siegfried W. Kefir, would later call strategic amnesia, an institutional ability to forget inconvenient and expensive truths. The Bearspaw South Feeder Main was not just another pipe. It was the linchpin, the single point of failure for more than half the city, and the inspections that could have detected the snapping wires. The internal corrosion, the slow-motion heart attack happening inside of it, were repeatedly canceled. In 2017, a scheduled internal inspection was deferred. In 2020, another was put off. In 2022, a third opportunity to look inside the ticking bomb was redirected. The rationale was always the same: budget constraints, and a perceived low likelihood of failure. Low likelihood. For the pipe that supplies 60% of the water to 1.6 million people. It's a staggering failure of foresight. If this story is making you think, please hit the like button so more people will see it. And if you have family or friends who live in a rapidly growing city, share it with them. This isn't just about Calgary's past, it's about North America's future. Siegfried Kefir's final report, released in the grim aftermath of the second failure, did not mince words. What had crept into the city's management culture, he wrote, was an acceptance of, or a tolerance of, I'm going to say, too high a risk level for an essential service utility operation. It was a damning indictment. The city had been playing chicken with its own survival. As Maddie Semiatiki, an infrastructure expert at the University of Toronto, put it, when you do that for long enough, the odds tell you that things are going to break down. The odds had finally caught up. When the call came in on the night of December 30th, 2025, Sclater Patterson knew what he was facing. As the operational performance lead for the city's water distribution, he was the man responsible for taming the beast. His first priority was simple, brutal, and immediate. Stop the bleeding, he later recalled. Stop the water, because it causes a lot of damage. But stopping a 1.95 meter geyser isn't as simple as turning a tap. Patterson's crews raced to the nearest subterranean valve chamber, a concrete bunker built to house the massive gearworks that could choke off the flow. They descended into the chamber, the sound of the nearby rupture a deafening roar. They put their tools to the valve. And nothing happened. The valve was broken. Seized, useless. The one piece of equipment designed for this exact emergency had failed at the first moment it was needed. The water kept coming. The highway kept flooding. The chaos was winning. What happened next was a desperate scramble in the dark. Patterson's team had to abandon the failed valve and race several kilometers down the pipeline. They were hunting for the next valve in the sequence, praying it would work. Every minute that passed, millions of liters of treated drinking water were being lost, damaging property, and threatening to destabilize the entire city grid. It was a scene of analog, brute force engineering in a digital world. Men in a concrete room fighting a broken iron wheel, while a modern city teetered on the brink. This was not a scenario from a disaster movie. This was the recorded, documented reality of what it took to stop the flood. While Patterson's crews wrestled with the valves, the rest of the city's emergency infrastructure was groaning under an impossible load. With the Bearspaw plant offline, the city's entire water supply rested on its secondary facility, the Glenmore Water Treatment Plant. On a normal winter day, Glenmore operates at a comfortable, steady pace. But this was not a normal day. To keep water flowing to hospitals, to firefighters, to homes, the Glenmore plant was forced to pump at 3 times its normal winter output, 300% capacity, pushing its own systems to their absolute limit day after day just to keep the grid from collapsing entirely. It was an engineering miracle born of pure desperation. A system designed with redundancy was now running on its last line of defense. The crisis wasn't just about supply, it was about repair. During the first break in 2024, the city discovered it had a problem that went beyond its own borders. They needed to replace the shattered sections of the 78-inch PCCP pipe. But a pipe this large isn't an off-the-shelf part. You can't just go to a hardware store. As the search began, a bleak reality set in. There were no replacement sections available. Not in Calgary, not in Alberta, not in all of Canada. The supply chain for their most critical piece of infrastructure simply did not exist. In a moment of frantic improvisation, a Calgary engineer picked up the phone. He called an old colleague, someone he knew from the industry, who now worked for the San Diego County Water Authority in California. The call was a Hail Mary. Could they possibly have a spare 78-inch pipe? Incredibly, the answer was yes. The San Diego utility immediately loaded 2 massive 24-foot sections of pipe onto flatbed trucks. They began a journey of over 1,600 miles, a lifeline inching its way north on interstate highways, a surreal symbol of how unprepared one of North America's major cities truly was. Calgary had to be rescued by a friend in California because it couldn't source a spare part in its own country. It's an incredible story of cooperation, but it's also a story of desperation. You know, I'm going to interrupt myself for a second. If you're still watching, you're clearly invested. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? I know, this is the second time I'm asking, but honestly, it is that important for us. Okay, back to the chaos. This reliance on outside helped underscore the fragility of the situation. The city was improvising. It was patching. It was holding on. But it was not in control. While the engineers scrambled, the public face of the crisis became one of grim resolve. The newly elected mayor, Jeremy Farkas, who had taken office just 2 months before the second break, was forced to level with his citizens in the starkest terms imaginable. Daily press conferences with SEMA Chief Sue Henry became a ritual. They set an emergency water consumption target under 485 million liters per day. A red line. On January 7th, 2026, the city blew past it, consuming a dangerous 507 million liters. The margin for error was gone. It was in this moment that Mayor Farkas delivered a warning that cut through all the noise. This was not just about inconvenience. It was not about brown lawns or dusty cars. He warned that if consumption didn't come down, the city risked entering loss of life territory. The scenario he laid out was chilling. A major fire could break out, and the hydrants could run dry. Firefighters would arrive, hook up their hoses, and get nothing but a trickle. Buildings would burn. Lives would be at risk. The social contract was being rewritten in real time. Your long shower could mean your neighbor's house burns down. That was the choice. That was the consequence. The Kefir report, when it landed in January 2026, was the official autopsy. It confirmed what many had suspected. This was not an act of God. It was a failure of management, a failure of investment, a failure of imagination. The report's central finding was that the city leadership had suffered from a tolerance of too high a risk level. For 20 years, since the McKnight Main blew, they knew. They knew this technology was vulnerable. They knew their most important pipe was made of it. And they chose, again and again, to defer. They prioritized other, flashier municipal projects. New buildings. New transit lines. Things you could see, touch, and cut a ribbon in front of. The invisible, critical world underground was left to decay. The risk was abstract. The cost of maintenance was concrete. So, they rolled the dice. And lost. The report made a series of recommendations, but one stood out as a direct response to the cultural failure it had identified. It demanded accountability. It demanded a structural change that would prevent water infrastructure from getting lost in the shuffle of general city services ever again. The city had to act. And in June of 2026, it did. Fulfilling a key demand of the panel, the city of Calgary stripped water management out from under the general umbrella of infrastructure services. They created a dedicated, standalone water utility, a single entity with a single focus, keeping the water on. And they appointed a new leader, Michael Thompson, as its acting chief operating officer. Thompson wasn't a new face. He was the former general manager of infrastructure services, the very department that had presided over the decay. Now he was being given a new title, a new mandate, and the monumental task of fixing a broken system and a broken culture of trust. It was a signal, a promise that this time it would be different. But promises don't fix crumbling concrete. The only real solution was to abandon the old pipe entirely. The city is now in the midst of a frantic, desperate race against time. A massive $609 million infrastructure overhaul is underway. The plan is to build a new parallel feeder main. This time, not with brittle, unpredictable PCCP, but with resilient, modern steel. It is an engineering effort on a scale the city has not seen in decades. They are not just digging a trench, they are tunneling. Crews are working around the clock, starting from the Shaganappi pump station, boring a massive concrete casing under roads, under buildings, under the very fabric of the city. Inside this protective casing, they will slide the new steel pipe, section by section. It is like performing open heart surgery on a patient who is still running a marathon. They are building the new artery while the old one could fail again at any moment. As of June 2026, the first major stage of this gargantuan project, Stage A, was just 51% complete. 51%. The new pipe isn't even close to being finished, and the old one is still carrying the water for 1 million people every single day. Every day that passes is another day the city is betting that the old pipe will hold. Just a little longer. The cost is staggering, $609 million. To put that in perspective, it is a sum that could have funded decades of proactive inspections and preventative maintenance that were deemed too expensive in 2017, 2020, and 2022. The city is now paying the price for its deferrals with interest. It's the classic infrastructure paradox. The cost of repair is always an order of magnitude greater than the cost of maintenance. The city saved millions by not looking inside the pipe. Now it is spending over $500 million because of what it didn't see. So as they tunnel under the city, as the new steel pipe waits on a staging ground, the real question remains. And yes, I know, I'm about to ask again, but look, we put hundreds of hours into this research. We have a ridiculously low subscribe rate from viewers. Please, if you've learned anything, help us out and click that red button. It's the only way this works. Okay, shameless plug over. The real question is, does this fix the problem? The new pipe will solve the immediate mechanical issue. A steel main is far less likely to fail in the same catastrophic, explosive way. It will restore reliability to the system. But does it solve the underlying disease? Does it cure the culture of risk tolerance that Siegfried Kefir identified? Does a new pipe change the political calculus that consistently favors visible, above-ground projects over the invisible, essential work of maintaining what's already there? Or will the city of Calgary, in 2045, find itself debating whether to defer an expensive inspection on its now aging steel pipe, because the likelihood of failure is perceived to be low, and there are other, more pressing budget priorities? The neighborhoods directly impacted by the breaks, Bowness, Montgomery, Parkdale, they understand the stakes. They lived with the floods, the boil water advisories, the uncertainty. They saw the temporary flood barriers go up along the Bow River pathway, a flimsy defense against the power of their own water supply. For them, this isn't an abstract debate about municipal finance. It's about security. It's about trust. It's about whether the water will be there tomorrow. The city is building a new beginning, a steel solution tunneled beneath the ground, a $609 million promise that it has learned its lesson. But the old pipe is still there, still active,